All right, welcome back to the Making the Madness College Basketball Podcast, coming to you live on YouTube, doing a special, preview podcast for the season. We're going through the awards, giving out preseason trophies because obviously preseason trophies mean more than postseason trophies. I think it's fair to say that's definitely more important. Player of the year, coach of the year, newcomer of the year, freshman of the year, and defensive player of the year. We're doing one for all of those. We're also doing some overrated, underrated, who will be the one seeds, some dark horse candidates. So just going through it all. And Sean, uh, should be a fun show.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're very close to the college basketball season. I don't know, the last 50 days or so have really went by pretty fast. I thought it was gonna feel like forever, but it's really gone by fast and made the off season easier to deal with. But there was a lot of movement this entire off season, so we're always getting college basketball news. And even today, as we were recording this, Terrence Shannon Jr. is being held out for a little bit, and as Texas Tech reviews if he's able to play right away after testing the NBA draft waters and all that. So I'm sure we'll see more details on that in the future. But that's pretty big news for Texas Tech at this point. They started out with North Florida on opening night. That'll be an easy game anyway. So if there's potential eligibility issues, you might as well deal with it now instead of dealing with it when you're in Big 12 play.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, I don't think they'll have any issues getting by in North Florida.
No,
But
the
uh,
Osprey though, that you never know.
yeah, hopefully it's less of a, if it is a suspension, less of a suspension than uh, what Kofi Coburn got for uh, dealing, I think, apparel on players trunk. I think that's what it was. So uh, hopefully a little bit less of a suspension there.
Yeah, Kofi Coburn got 3 games, I believe, for selling
Yeah.
some of his merchandise. Pretty stupid suspension by the NCAA. They just seem to never find a way to get out of their own way. They're always doing something to make themselves look dumb. So that's what they did in this circumstance. They easily could have just been like, you know what? We're going to let Kofi Coburn play because that would be allowed right now with the new NIL stuff. So if he did it a month later, he'd be fine to play the first 3 games of the season, but it doesn't really matter. I think Illinois' toughest game in that stretch is against Marquette, who also has a suspended player, Greg Elliott, right now. So there's all kinds of players missing from games at the moment.
Yeah. Greg Elliott missing. I don't think it'll be too big of an issue. I guess we'll eventually touch on game previews for all that, but Illinois should be. Marquette's not that good this year, I don't think.
No, they're not. That offense is going to be a complete disaster. But
Yeah,
defensively, they'll be pretty good.
yeah, they'll be tough. Shaka Smart, he always coaches a decent defense, so
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes. But it is awards time now, and going to give out some awards here, and we're going to start obviously at the front. Player of the year. Uh, I'll let you kick this off.
I mean, I said it a year ago. I was a little early, but I think Drew Timme is going to be the National Player of the Year. He led Gonzaga in scoring and rebounding last season. You could have had an argument for him winning WCC Player of the Year, but I think the leadership factor from Corey Kispert is ultimately why he ended up winning it. But Drew Timme is now the leader of this team. He's one of the longest, been one of the longest. He's been on Gonzaga longer than most players on the team, and he is their best player for sure. He can do everything except for really shoot the ball. He's not a great defender, but he's a great playmaker for his size, great scorer inside, great footwork. He does everything you'd want from him. And then as runners up, I'm going a little bit off the grid here, I guess, with Jaime Hawk. I think he's UCLA's most valuable player. He's not going to lead them in scoring, but he can rebound, he can score inside and out, and he's a versatile defender. I think he contributes more to winning than Johnny Juzang does. And the other one, you'll see more so why I'm saying this one right now, but I'll get into it later. I changed my pick a little bit here. I'm going to go with Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana. He was great last year as a sophomore, comes back as a junior, and I think this is the best roster he's had around him since he's been at Indiana. And I think Mike Anderson is really going to help him thrive this season. I could see him averaging, 21, 22 points, 10 or 11 rebounds, and that definitely puts him in the conversation for National Player of the Year. And I'm very high on Indiana this season. I think they'll be back to prominence this year.
Yeah, I think I kind of have Indiana as like a borderline. I think they're on the outs, but they're like kind of close to the top 25 for me. So I definitely
Yeah, I
see.
have them. I have them in the back end of my top
Yeah.
25. But
But if Indiana makes the NCAA tournament, one, Trace Jackson Davis uh, deserves to be not only an All American, but first teamer as well. Yeah, I think the first team All Americans, just the All American list is going to be kind of unique this year because we have so many great bigs.
that's true.
It's going to be interesting to see if like teams vote or if they vote, they insert like you have to have two guards on the first team or something like that. It'll be interesting to see what the kind of postseason awards end up looking like. But in terms of player of the year, I also went with Drew Timme. He's just the best college basketball player. You mentioned his footwork inside. He's probably the best post player we've seen. I mean, in the past decade or so, like you get him on the post, he's going to score the basket pretty automatically. Like I think,
Or you'll foul him.
yeah, or you'll foul him, which he's not a bad free throw shooter either. So he can make
Yeah.
free throws as well. It's not like fouling Hassan French, where
I mean, yeah, if you foul Hassan French, like there's a very good chance he's not making either of them.
yeah,
But
uh,
yeah, I guess St. Louis doesn't have to worry about that this year.
yeah,
I'm sure they'd prefer to have him, but
yeah, uh, yeah. So Drew Timme, I mean, just fantastic. I think clear front runner for Player of the Year. There will be other players I think in contention for this award, but I think it'll ultimately go to Drew Timme. I gave Giant Juzang as kind of my runner up, both going UCLA guys at number 2. I think if he continues that scoring run from the NCAA tournament, I don't think he needs to average 22 points per game like he did in the NCAA tournament, but let's say he averages 18, 19, 20 points per game, and UCLA is, in contention for 1 seed and winning the Pac-12. I think that would get him at least on the first team All-American list, and maybe not over Timme, but like he would be in the Player of the Year discussion. And then my other runner-up, Paulo Bancaro, who I think is probably going to average close to like 20 and 10 on Duke, and it's Coach K's last year, so he'll get plenty of publicity as well.
and he plays for Duke. You can't go wrong with that. I feel like a Duke guy's always kind of in the mix, but Paulo Banchero is really good. So I think he's going to be in for a big season. It's not just that he goes to Duke, but I think he might be the best freshman in college basketball since Zion. I mean, obviously Cade Cunningham was great last season, but Paulo Banchero is really good.
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's between Paulo and Cade Cunningham. But yeah, speaking of, let's just go right into Freshman of the Year. I chose Paulo Bancaro as Freshman
Easy
of the Year.
choice.
Yeah.
Easy choice.
Now I get Chet Holmgren was ranked higher in, I think, 247, which is kind of the mecca of college basketball recruiting. But a lot of that just comes down to Paulo Bancaro is just going to be in a position to score a whole lot more points than what Chet Holmgren is. Chet's probably going to be like second or third on the team in scoring. Obviously, Drew Timme is going to take the majority of the load. They'll be a pretty balanced scoring team, whereas I think Paulo Bancaro is going to average 18, 20 points per game, as previously mentioned. Chet could have a bigger impact, but I think Paulo ends up getting the award. And then Jabari Smith's my third nominee. I think he'll have a good season for Auburn, but I think it's Paulo Bancaro's award to lose.
Yeah, I think it'll be an SEC guy as the third guy among them. I went with Ty Washington. He's looked incredible in everything Kentucky's done. They did the blue-white game, the inter-squad scrimmage not that long ago, and they played 2 exhibition games. And he was really impressive in both of them. He can create shots. He can create for others. He does everything you'd like in a combo guard, and he is definitely going to be a lottery pick in my mind. He might wind up being the most impactful freshman in the country this season. He is just really talented in Kentucky. That's a reason why I think they're going to be so good because he is awesome.
Yeah, I equally have Kentucky being very good. We'll kind of get into some
Yeah,
other.
so there were some people I tweeted like they were losing against a D2 team in an exhibition for a little bit, and there's people I was like, I still have them in the Final Four even if they lose this game. So I guess spoiler, I have them in the Final Four. But there were some people that weren't super pleased with that take.
Yes. Um, we'll get into our Final Four takes later. But yeah, I have high regards for Kentucky as well. Uh, I guess continuing along the awards, we can stay in the player of year, the player awards. Go to newcomer of the year. I think this is going to be Marcus Carr out of Texas. I think he's going to get tasked with shouldering the biggest amount of responsibility. I think Chris Beard's going to kind of let him play like Marcus Carr. He's going to have, I think, high scoring output and high assist output. I put Kellen Grady and Remy Martin as my kind of runner-ups. I think Remy Martin's going to not quite get the leeway early on in the season. We've seen in the exhibition, Chris Tehan started over Remy Martin, which is always
That's not gonna happen on a
Yeah.
Tuesday. If
Yeah.
if Chris Tehan, probably saying that wrong, is starting over Remy Martin against Michigan State, that'd be crazy. But I can't foresee that happening.
I think they'll start Remy Martin as a two guard. Hot take.
I mean, if it's next to DeJuan Harris, I like that.
Yeah.
But like I've talked about this a little bit, but I don't see them playing Joseph Yesufu and Remy Martin together and seeing that work. Like it's just they're two guards that look to score first. I don't think that there's both small guards that try to score first. That doesn't really work. Like I don't think that would be beneficial to Kansas. I think their best lineup, ideally, if they're in a national championship game or something, which you never know, they could, is probably Remy Martin, Ochai Agbaji, Christian Brown, Jalen Wilson, and David McCormick. Obviously, Wilson is suspended for the first 3 games of the season, so he won't be there for the Michigan State game. But I just can't see Martin and Yesufu being used together a ton. I think when they got Yesufu, they were like, okay, he's our guy. I don't think they initially planned to land Remy Martin like that.
Yeah. I think they'll play DeJuan Harris will, I think, play a lot more than maybe what we thought. And I think,
He's a good glue guy. Like he's
yeah,
not gonna go and impress you shooting wise. If you leave him open, he could hit it, but that's not his game. He's gonna defend and he's gonna set the table. I think DeJuan Harris could be a very good asset for this team because he did play pretty solid last year.
yeah, he's a good table setter. But yeah, going back to newcomer of the year, I think Remy Martin, he'll get kind of close to newcomer of the year. I don't actually know if they give out this award nationally.
I don't think they do, but for us, we're going to pick it. And I'm also it's given to only transfers, right? Like
Yeah.
is it given to freshmen? Okay, I thought it was given to transfers only,
Yeah.
but it's our award that we're like people give it out in conferences,
Yeah.
like conferences award this. I don't think it's a national thing, but it'll be our national thing for
Yeah.
like our awards. This is our national awards. We're putting it as part of it. And then when we come back in March or I guess April, or yeah, no, March. Yeah,
March
March.
or April, something
Yeah,
like that.
we'll give this award out again, and we'll see who gets it.
Yeah. I feel pretty confident in my Marcus Carr pick.
I do too. That's my pick. I'm going to Marcus Carr. I feel like he's underrated as a playmaker. Like he can really tally up the assists. He could play in the pick and roll game, but he can also really score the basketball. Great step back jumper. But I think the thing about it, his assist numbers will probably be like 6, 7, or 8 of the game this season. Like he's going to be one of the top assist getters in the country this season. I don't think he's a selfish player. I think this is a guy you could win with. And I just think Minnesota just wasn't very good. Like, I think that's what it comes down to. They just didn't have the guys around him. They had Liam Robbins and Gabe Kalster, who shot 20% from 3 last year. And Kalster got hurt. So did Robbins late in the season. Then who are you passing to? Like, Booth Gotch was hurt too a little bit. So he didn't really have anybody to pass to. He just kind of had to try to score 40 a game if they were able to win. And that was a big downfall of Minnesota's season. They just were super injured, and they just weren't that good in general. They were just playing above their talent level, and that came down a little bit. And now Marcus Carr has guys like Timmy Allen, Dylan Disu, Trey Mitchell, Andrew Jones, Courtney Ramey, Christian Bishop. Like, there's just no shortage of talent on this Texas team. And that's why I think Marcus Carr is the point guard to lead them to a potential Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And kind of one last point on Marcus Carr. You know, when Barn Minnesota was having great performances,
Oh,
he
man.
had help. He had help. He had Liam
Barn
Robbins.
Minnesota was crazy.
Yeah, he had Liam Robbins was playing great. I think
What about Brandon Johnson, who's now at DePaul, but he made eight threes. Yeah, it was 7 or 8 threes in that Iowa game on Christmas Day. He was just not missing. Like, in overtime, I think he's the only Minnesota player that scored, and they won in overtime against Iowa. He just wasn't missing. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I'm not sure he made another three the rest of the year, but hey, he came up big in that one. Now he's at DePaul. They're not going to make the NCAA tournament, but Brandon Johnson should play a solid role.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, moving on here, Defensive Player of the Year. I went with Osun Asunayi out of St. Bonaventure. I think that's how you pronounce it correctly. I just think he does so much defensively for St. Bonaventure to kind of, anchor that defense. He's a great shot blocker, very mobile. So he's able to kind of anchor that defense and really, I think, set St. Bonaventure up to have success. He was my A10 Defensive Player of the Year. A10 Player of the Year. I'm going with him as National Defensive Player of the Year. Then I got Isaac Likely out of Oklahoma State and Isaiah Whaley out of Yukon being kind of like my other nominees for the award. Posh Alexander I might throw in there since Isaiah Whaley and Posh Alexander are co-Big East Defensive Player of the Years. I'll throw them both in there.
Yeah.
And then Isaac Likely is another player I would put out there. So, but I think Osun is my favorite for the award.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. He has a 7'6" wingspan. He can block everything. He can defend guards. He is a very versatile defender. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him be selected kind of in the NBA draft, kind of in the range where Neemias Queta was last year, who was one of the best defenders in the country at Utah State. I think that can kind of be his way he gets into the NBA. I think he's definitely an NBA-level player, even though he's not a three-point shooter. He can run the floor, good rim-running big man that can block shots. He's going to be really good for the Bonnies this season. For me, it's Lucas Williamson, another mid-major guy. He just is an awesome defender. He's experienced at Loyola Chicago. He'll be a really good piece in the Missouri Valley. And then I'm going to go with, I'll put Osun Asunayi on my list too, and then I'll go with Elijah Harkless at Oklahoma. He's a really good defender, started his career at Cal State Northridge, and now has Porter Moser as his coach. That should only help him continue being a great defender.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great defenders in college basketball, and
there's no Davion Mitchell.
Yeah,
there's no off night, but there's a lot of relatively bad nights, but there's no off nights for offensive players.
Yeah, I mean the defenders we kind of lost because you had
Marcus Garrett.
Yeah, Marcus Garrett. So you had the two reigning defensive player of the years were both gone now. So
Mark Vital.
So yeah, I mean
Franz Wagner, who got absolutely robbed of the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I don't know how they gave that to Daryl Morcell. He's also a great defender, but that Franz Wagner was the best defender in the Big Ten.
Now Daryl Morcell, he could have stayed at Maryland and won back-to-back, but now he's going.
Who knows? Maybe wins in the Big East. I mean, Posh Alexander and Isaiah. They'll give it to all three of them probably.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Big East way.
Yeah.
Aaron Thompson might get a piece of it, so you're getting like 4 guys that might win it. So they'll all win it.
Yeah, I forgot Aaron Thompson's coming back. I think he may have won it the year before.
He's probably won it. That wouldn't surprise me. That seems like an Aaron Thompson kind of thing.
Yeah, so it'll be a 4-way tie. Can we make it
Montez
5-way?
Mathis? Yeah, put Montez Mathis in there. Get 5.
5-way tie. There we go.
I'm in. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right. Let's see. Coach of the Year. We'll go to that. I think that's the last of the awards here. I went with I went with Matt Painter out of Purdue. I just think he's always pretty solid. I think this is going to be the year he's going to have a tough coaching job, but if he delivers Purdue as like a 1 or 2 seed, I think they end up giving him the award. And he's just kind of a really solid coach. I could also see them just giving Coach K a lifetime achievement award, so I'll put him up there. I don't know if Duke ends up being the number 1 overall seed, maybe you could say like he deserves it. But even if Duke's a 3 seed, just as expectations would be, and I could still see them giving Coach K Coach of the Year just as a lifetime achievement award, and then Chris Beard as well, just because what he's done turning this program around. So those are my
Yeah,
options.
Coach of the Year is always an interesting award. You look at 2 years ago, Anthony Grant won it, and he deserved it for sure. But the best two teams in the country were Kansas and Gonzaga. Bill Self or Mark Few, they did not win it. So that's kind of the direction I'm going with this year. I think there's a number of guys, like I think Matt Painter's a good one that could overachieve a little bit. I think they're ranked like 8th in the country in the AP poll. I could see them being a 1 seed. But I'm going to go in a direction. There's two guys I thought of. Both are new hires. Both I think have, Elite Eight, Final Four potential. That's probably a hot take, but they're two teams I like a lot. So it's like, I think it could be Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, or the one I'm going to go with Mike Woodson. I think he's going to do a great job at Indiana this season. I think Trace Jackson Davis is going to be one of the best players in the country this season. And that roster is just a lot better. You have Rob Finney as a defensive point guard. You have Xavier Johnson as more of an offensive playmaking point guard. Then you have shooting. That's the biggest thing Indiana has not had in recent years. They have Miller Kopp, who can play the 4 or the 3. 6'7", can absolutely shoot the ball very well from outside. Parker Stewart from UT Martin coming in, started his career at Pittsburgh. Tamar Bates could be a first-round pick. He's going to be a really good shooter. Race Thompson can stretch the floor and shoot it a little bit. So there's no shortage of shooting on this Indiana team this season, even though you lose Al Durham and Armand Franklin. The players around Trace Jackson Davis are just so much better than what he's had the first years of his career. So that's a big reason why I think this team's going to be better. But I just think that environment in Assembly Hall is a tough one to play in. They should be really good at home, like usual. But I think just overall, this team's going to be able to win some Big Ten road games. They're going to be good in the non-conference, and they're going to be great at home. So I think they could be like a 3 or a 4 seed on Selection Sunday, and I think they could go very far in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I definitely think Mike Woodson, if Indiana's able to achieve like being a 3 seed or a 4 seed, which I don't think is too outlandish. Obviously when you have one of the 5-3, whatever you want to say, Trace Jackson Davis is like he's a top 10 player in the sport. So whenever
Oh
you
yeah,
have
no question.
someone
I'd
like
say top 7 at like worst.
yeah, I want to say I had him at like 6 on my player top 100 player rankings,
That's
which
fair.
would
Yeah, that's fair.
fall in the top 7, I guess. But uh, whenever you have a player at that level of talent, I mean, the big thing is just surrounding him with the proper parts, and I think Tamar Bates provides some athleticism, some scoring punch. Parker Stewart's an elite shooter. Xavier Johnson can create off the dribble, so surrounding him with good shooting is probably going to help him a little bit out, and maybe he doesn't have to drive into double and triple teams all the time.
And even if he does, like he made some good passes. Like he's a pretty good passer, but he could pass it out and most of the time it was not going in. It
Yeah,
just Indiana just was a bad shooting team, and everybody knew that Trace Jackson Davis was going to go try to go inside with his left hand, and that just didn't always work because teams knew it was coming. But he was still able to be awesome last year. Got to the foul line a ton. One of the I think he had one of the highest free throw rates in the country, and he's a pretty solid free throw shooter. I wouldn't expect Trace Jackson Davis to come out and just shoot a bunch of threes, but if he could add that to his arsenal, he'll become even more dangerous.
absolutely. Next up here, we're going to go into our most overrated teams, then our most underrated teams, and then we'll kind of get into some tournament talk. But first, for most overrated teams, we have the same one. Actually, we have 2 of the same ones, but I'll start out with Virginia. what besides the coach being Tony Bennett, what says this team is going to do anything resembling being a top 25 team? Like the roster is not good. Kihei Clark is a system point guard at best. He is a role player on a team with 3 NBA level players.
I don't know if Kyle Guy is an NBA level player. He's already like out of the NBA, but Kyle Guy was a great college player.
Okay, 2.5 NBA level players. One of them who is already like
really good.
Yeah, DeAndre Hunter, and then
Ty Jerome's on the Thunder. You're a Thunder fan. Is Ty Jerome doing good?
He's okay sometimes.
Okay, there you go.
He plays minutes.
Hey, the Thunder beat the Lakers They beat them twice. That's the only team they can beat.
We're gonna go if we play them 4 times, we're gonna go 4-78.
I mean, get that first pick, go get Paulo Bancaro. But with the way the NBA lottery works, you'd probably end up with like the 9th pick. So
yeah, we'll be looking at like AJ Griffin or Jaden Ivey.
Hey, don't disrespect Jaden Ivey.
He's great. He's just not.
He's the best player in the draft. And maybe you'll get like, man, I can't even think who, like Jabari Smith.
Yeah,
maybe
that's a potential.
Benedict Mathurin.
One of the Memphis guys.
Although I don't know if I'd take either of them that high. Maybe Bates. I would not take Jalen Duren 9th overall probably. But going back more on Virginia, I'm with you. It's tough calling them overrated, but like we look at what they were a few years ago. They came off the national championship and they lost everybody except for Mamadi Diakite pretty much. I mean, Jay Huff came back, but he didn't really play at all the year before. Yeah. So you lost Ty Jerome, you lost DeAndre Hunter, and you lost Kyle Guy. I think Braxton Key came back. So you had Braxton Key back and you had Mamadi Diakite back. But that was it. And they were terrible offensively until like February.
They were terrible in February. They just won because they didn't allow any points.
Yeah, they won because of defense. They really picked it up. They won like 6 or 7 straight games at the end of the year. They went from like a bubble team in like January to like, okay, they're going to be like a 5 seed that definitely loses to a 12 seed. And, we'll never know because the NCAA tournament didn't happen. But you look at what they had last year. They lost as a 4 seed. Obviously, circumstances were a little strange. They were on like a brief COVID pause before the NCAA tournament. Justin McCoy was out with COVID protocols, and he's not on the team anymore either. He's at North Carolina. But you lose your best shooters. You lose Sam Hauser. You lose Jay Huff. You lose Tomas Wildetense, and you lose Trey Murphy. Those are 4 super valuable players for a team that was pretty good offensively, all things considered. They just didn't have like a great point guard creator because that's not what Kihei Clark is. But they had a lot of guys that Kihei Clark could make plays for, and that worked out more often than not. They don't have that this year. Unless Tane Murray, the freshman from New Zealand, is going to play a lot of minutes as a freshman, which I don't know if is going to happen because freshmen at Virginia typically don't. So I don't know if that's going to happen, and he's a really good shooter. Igor Milicic, another overseas guy, can stretch the floor a little bit. He's like a 6'9", 6'10" big man. But you're looking at like Caden Shedrick and Francisco Cafaro at the 5, Reese Beekman starting next to Kihei Clark. I think Beekman could be really good, but he hasn't proven to be a great shooter either. And there's just not a lot of shooting. Armand Franklin coming in, he's going to be a really good shooter, but that's about it in terms of shooting. So shooting is going to be a big problem. Obviously, defensively, they'll be great, but I'm just not seeing it offensively. Like, they have all the makings of like a 7 seed that loses to a 10 seed. Like, that's what I see.
I see them as the 10 seed losing the 7 seed.
I could see that too. They'll be in the tournament. Like, I don't doubt that. Like, they'll be in the tournament because Tony Bennett's their head coach. Yeah. And they have some talent. It's just not all there. Like, Jaden Gardner coming in too, I didn't really see him being like a typical Tony Bennett guy. He's not much of a floor stretcher. He hasn't really proven to do that. And he can't really play the 5. He's like more of a mid-range bruising big man. Bruising power forward that can really score inside. Jaden Gardner is a good player, but he's not a great defender, and he can't shoot the ball. At least he hasn't shown to. And he was on a bad East Carolina team. I don't think that matters a ton because he was super productive. But I don't know what kind of role he's going to play. Is he going to be really good, or is he going to be like a 9, 10 point per game guy? I'm not sure. Like, that's something I want to wait and see. Like, if he ends up being really good, like 15, 16 a game like he was at East Carolina, then that changes my tune a little bit. I still think they'll be a bad shooting team, but if Jaden Gardner is their go-to guy, I think that makes Virginia a really solid team. So if that happens, then I'll be more in on Virginia. But for now, I'm definitely not all the way in.
Yeah, I'm not even in. I'm out on Virginia. I'm selling all this stock that actually I sold all my Virginia stock after they won the 2019 national
Yeah,
championship. So
that's
good,
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
good to sell it at the highest points as you could
Yeah.
possibly sell it. But yeah, if I have any stock, I'm selling it right away. I don't think they're going to be that great. I think they'll make the tournament just because Tony Bennett is very good. And if they're a top 20 team, give Tony Bennett, coach of the year nationally because this roster is just not great. You mentioned Gardner. I think he's probably more of like a empty stats on a bad team like he was at East Carolina. He wasn't that efficient.
He was solid though. Like
Yeah,
he was there just wasn't much around him, and that was one
yeah,
of the issues. Like
yeah,
that there just wasn't much there. And like they did beat Houston last year, so maybe they play Houston again. Virginia plays Houston like the first or second weekend of the year, so maybe they could pull off a win there.
yeah.
Probably not, but maybe.
Armand Franklin, he was like solid at Indiana, but again, Indiana was not a tournament team last year. So
They were pretty subpar.
I don't necessarily like. I think Reese Beekman's going to take a pretty big step forward, but I don't see it being
But he
big
almost
enough.
has to.
Yeah,
Like it's not like, okay, maybe Reese Beekman can, you know, come into his own this season and
yeah,
that would be big. Like he has to if Virginia is going to be good.
yeah. And then same with. I mean, Kihei Clark is just kind of what he is. Like he's a very good role player, but
Mm.
uh, if he has to be the guy, you're not going to be that great. So and I also don't see the defense. Like you don't have Jay Huff just swatting, being a human SWAT machine inside. You don't have, I mean, Mamadi Diakite was great that year. They had Braxton Key. Like even thinking back to that 2020 team that, was probably like a 6 or a 7 seed. They had great defenders. I'm not seeing the great defensive players. I have my concerns at the 5. So just
I think Shedrick and Kafaro will be kind of like what Jack Salt was for a number of years, which isn't great, but he'll set screens and play defense. I think that's what you're getting there. You're
yeah,
not getting Jay Huff.
yeah. So I'm out on them. Other team, Yukon. I think the defense is going to be very good with this team. I'm just not quite buying the offense. They were kind of like a borderline, top 25 team with James Bouknight a season ago. I'm not
Really
seeing,
bad without him.
yeah, and they couldn't make a shot to save their lives when he was out. So I'm not seeing how this is still a top 25 team. Maybe I end up being wrong. I'll still project Yukon as a tournament team, but I'm just not seeing this being a team that is top 25 level throughout the season.
Yeah, I think they'll be great defensively. Adama Sanogo should take a jump offensively. Isaiah Whaley is a great post defender. A Cook. He should be, fully healthy. He missed a portion of last year recovering from his torn Achilles. I like his potential quite a bit, especially as a versatile defender. So he should be pretty solid. But for me, it's the scoring. I mean, there's just not a ton of proven scoring. RJ Cole, can he be the guy? I'm not sure. We'll have to see. And then you look at like Andre Jackson. Can he take a step up? He's never been a really good shooter, but he's always been like a great athlete. Can he become a shooter? Then you look at Jordan Hawkins as a freshman. What can he do? If Hawkins or Jackson emerge as a go-to scorer, I could see UConn being a top 25 team pretty consistently, but I'm not fully buying into that yet. So I'm skeptical a bit on UConn. I think I had them like 6 in the Big East. I had them as a tournament team more as like a 10 or 11 seed than like a 4 or 5 seed.
Yeah, that's kind of like where I kind of see them going into the season. Another team we kind of compared on, it was Oregon State.
Yep.
I kind of wanted to like Oregon State going into this year, kind of like as that scrappy underdog. But then, like, you see these preseason projections in the Pac-12 had them tied for 4th with Arizona. It's like, what are
I
we
just
doing
don't see
here?
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't see that. Like if Oregon State season ends against UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament, they'd be picked like 11th or 12th.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, they made a great run in the NCAA tournament, but I'm not gonna say they were a good team last year. They weren't. They
Yeah.
got hot, and like, hey, all respect to Wayne Tinkle and Ethan Thompson for doing that in his senior season. He knew that was going to be it for his career at Oregon State. Then he was going to go pro, and he's going to have a very good pro career because Ethan Thompson was a great player at Oregon State. But they just weren't that good. I mean, they got hot at the right time, and they were able to get things going. Worth Alatishe is really good, versatile, and super athletic. I like his game quite a bit. Jared Lucas, I think it's kind of like a similar Virginia situation. They need Jared Lucas to become the go-to guy. They transitioned from Trace Tinkle, kind of from like Gary Payton II to Trace Tinkle to Ethan Thompson, and now it has to be Jared Lucas taking that step up this season. Then you add some transfers, none of which I think will be super impactful necessarily this season. Roman Silva down low led them in scoring against Tennessee in the NCAA tournament. I wouldn't expect that very often, but he showed more scoring against a smaller team in Tennessee. And then you have some other pieces like Gianni Hunt. I think he could be pretty solid. And then Davis from the JUCO level. I'm totally blanking on his first name for some reason. I like him a lot. I want to say Devonte Davis, but it's definitely not his name. It'll come to me. Deshaun Davis. He's yeah, Devonte Davis. That's Devo Davis. Deshaun Davis. He was really good at the JUCO level. Can shoot the ball at a game winner in their exhibition against a D2 team the other day. Great playmaker. He just does it all, and I think he's going to be a very good player for this Oregon State team. Liked watching him a lot at the JUCO level last year. I think he's going to be very good next to Jared Lucas. I think Worth Alatishe, Maurice Kalu is going to be very good too as a shooter. But there's just not enough here for me to say they're a tournament team. I don't see that.
Yeah. And like I kind of see them being like that scrappy sixth or seventh team in the Pac-12 that like wins a few games. I just like putting them in this basically on the same level as Arizona, who I think is like a clear NCAA tournament team. That's just kind of where I come at it with when it comes to overing Oregon State. If they were ranked like sixth in the preseason poll, I don't think anyone would have really noticed, but that they were fourth, that's kind of like where I took notice, and I think a lot of people took notice.
I think I have them ninth. Like, I think ninth is fair. That could be an NIT team. I just don't see it. Like, I
Yeah,
can't picture Oregon State being an at-large team. I just don't see that. It's kind of the same thing as Georgetown. I think most people are pretty relaxed on their Georgetown projections. I think most have them near the bottom of the Big East, where they should be. They aren't an upper tier Big East team because they got hot at the right time.
yeah,
I think overreactions in March is definitely something that happens pretty frequently, and I think that's different from what you see at the UCLA. They did get hot at the right time, but they return everybody that appeared in their Final Four game against Gonzaga at a rim protector with Miles Johnson and at a five-star recruit. Even if they weren't in the Final Four, they're a top 10 team.
yeah. And then you had one more most overrated team. I'll let you kind of discuss.
Yeah, I went with USC. Again, another team that made a run a bit in the NCAA tournament. They were a 6 seed, right?
Yeah, six seed.
And had Evan Mobley. He was great, Pac-12 Player of the Year, even though it was actually Chris Duarte. But they can give it to Evan Mobley. That's fine. But I don't see it. Like, Drew Peterson's a good role player. Isaiah White is a solid role player. They'll both be fine. Max Agbong Polo's a good role player. Maybe he takes a step up this season. But you lose Taj Edey. You'll lose Evan Mobley, of course. I think Boogie Ellis should be pretty good. He can kind of play the same role Taj Edey did, and they'll probably have similar production. But you're losing Evan Mobley. Like, you lose him. He won every award imaginable for a player in the Pac-12 last season, and he's gone. You can look at Josh Morgan, the Long Beach State transfer, to maybe step in some of that role. Maybe Chavez Goodwin, who is returning for the COVID year. Or you can play Isaiah Mobley at the 5. Or you're banking on Isaiah Mobley taking a big step up, which I could see. But I don't think he's Evan Mobley. I think he's good. I just
Yeah,
don't think he's Evan Mobley good. So I think they're probably a tournament team, but they're like top 45 in the country for me. Not quite near the top 25.
yeah. I think that's kind of like pretty accurate where I would have them. I don't think they're top 25 team at all, but I think Isaiah
Like they
Mobley.
they receive votes, I think, right? Like
Yeah,
they received a little bit of votes.
yeah. Like I think they were a little bit better than what their six seed was. Like I kind of think as a team, like if you were power ranking them, I would say like they're 4 or 5 seed going into last year's tournament. So I do think that's kind of like one thing I'll kind of say. Like, I think they were better than what their seed was last season. But at the same time, like, you're losing Evan Mobley, who, I mean, as we stand, probably the rookie of the year in the NBA. Like, he's just very good.
Been great. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's been phenomenal in the
yeah,
NBA.
yeah. Like, he's a transcendent defender. He could space the floor as a shooter. So like, Evan Mobley is like once in a generation level big. Like, I think eventually he'll be like at the Joel Embiid, Jokic
Yeah.
level. But
Yeah, I think if he improves that shooting to be like a serious, uh, someone you seriously have to watch for out there, I think he could be a legitimate like long time NBA All Star.
yeah, I think Isaiah will be. I think he can take the offensive step forward. I don't think he'll be near as good the defender. I think Drew Peterson can kind of take kind of a step forward. I think Boogie Ellis will be a kind of good piece. I think he can kind of fill in that Tajidi role a little bit. Not quite as good, but like, you don't necessarily need him to be quite as good. It's just I think where you said is like they're not a top 25 team. They're more of like a top 45 team. I have them
Hmm.
as an NCAA tournament team, which I think they'll end up being an NCAA tournament level team, but I think they'll finish like fourth in the Pac-12 as opposed to third or yeah, I think third was where they were slot preseason wise.
Yeah, I think I have them sixth in the Pac-12. I have them behind Arizona State a little bit, like who I kind of see as a bubble team. That's kind of where I see USC, and then I think Washington State kind of above the bubble for me, and then Arizona I have safely in.
Speaking of, I guess we can transition. You mentioned Washington State. They're number one on my most underrated teams. I don't think enough people are giving this team credit. Uh, yeah, I think Michael Flowers was a perfect addition for this team. He's like a high level scorer, very efficient scorer. So I think he's going to be a good fit for this team. They bring back Noah Williams. They have one of the best front courts in this sport. So in terms of underrated teams, I think Washington State has to be near the top.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kyle Smith is a great coach. They'll be good on defense, and I think the offense is going to get better. Michael Flowers is probably better than Isaac Bonton. He's more efficient, at least. And then Tyrell Roberts, a UC San Diego transfer, is very underrated too. We didn't play last year in UCSD's transition year to Division One, but he shot almost 50% from deep at the D2 level 2 seasons ago, so he should be really good. Also, you had Muhammad Gee, a 5-star recruit who can play kind of the 3, 4, or the 5. You want to play big and probably play him at the 3. He's athletic enough. He can shoot the ball. You probably want him playing the 4 next to F.A. Abagidi. That'll work too. And then you have Andre Yakimovsky off the bench, Deshaun Jackson. So you have 2 really good bench players right there and some other guys that could fill in some roles like TJ Bamba. But I think that Washington State is relatively deep, and they have that star power with Noah Williams and F.A. Abagidi. Both are NBA level players, and I think Washington State will return to the NCAA tournament this season for the first time since Tony Bennett was their head coach.
I am on the same page. Uh, Next team I had up here, Butler. I think we kind of gloss over Butler maybe a little bit in Big East, contention because we got a lot of entertaining teams. I think Butler's going to be one of the more fascinating teams to watch. You have Chuck Harris, who I think was late in the season playing like one of the best players in the Big East, and then you kind of get back Aaron Thompson, who was like a really good, just elite glue guy for them a couple seasons ago when they would have been like a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament back in 2020. So you had him. You return a lot of pieces from last year's roster. I think they were one of those teams playing really well late in the season. So I think Butler is one of those teams I think going to be very underrated heading into this season.
Yeah, and then you look at Bryce Enzi and Bryce Golden both returning. Ty Gross coming in from Eastern Michigan as a good athlete that can defend. Miles Tate still recovering from his ACL tear. But I think Butler's pretty experienced. I think Lavelle Jordan's a good coach. I don't think the upside is super high, but I think they're a tournament team.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. Like they'll be like probably near the bubble, but I think they end up sneaking in.
Mm.
I'll let you go next with your team.
Yeah, I'll go with Arizona as my first one. I think they're really good. I think the upside is really high. Benedict Mathurin probably going to wind up being like a top 20 pick in the NBA draft. Azuolas Tubelis is my dark horse for Pac-12 Player of the Year. It reminds me a lot of Sandro Mamukelashvili from Seton Hall, now on the Milwaukee Bucks. Tubelis can shoot the ball. I think he's going to do more of that this season. Was really good for Lithuania in the U19 this past year. Solid defender, really good athlete. I think he's going to be a big time player for Arizona and one of the best players in all of the Pac-12. I think it's a little surprising he wasn't on the preseason first team All Pac-12 list, but I think he'll be there by the end of the season. Then you add a couple solid pieces from the portal with Justin Kier, Kim Aiken as the Big Sky Player of the Year Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year last year, and then Pelle Larson, who's recovering from an injury. I think he'll be back relatively soon. He can shoot the ball. He can run the point if you need him to. And I think this team at its best might be with him running the point or with Kerr Kriisa developing a bit. I guess I like that point guard duo. I think Kriisa is going to get it going. He only played like 8 games last year. I think he's going to be a really good long-term piece for the Wildcats. And Pelle Larson, I like his game a ton. It was between Arizona and Kansas. So Kansas wanted him, but he landed with Arizona. And I think Tommy Lloyd is going to get a lot out of him. He can run the point, shoot the ball. He can play three positions. He's going to be a big-time piece for this Arizona team. I like the depth. Christian Koloko should be really good, especially defensively. Arizona's a team I would not want to see scheduled against me in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think Arizona's going to take a step forward. When you have two players at Tubelis and Mathurin's level who are, I think, both going to be, the Pac-12 does 10-team first team, or I think so.
Yep.
Yeah. I think both of them will be on that 10 team. I'd say
I don't think Mathurin will be. I think Mathurin will be like second team. I think he'll be good. I just don't think he's going to be first team good. Like I don't think he's a top 10 player in the conference. Like I think he could be, but I think it can come down to like him and Marcus Bagley or something like that. Because there's a couple guys on the second team of the Pac-12 preseason like they didn't have Marion Jackson on any list. I think he's gonna be first team. Quincy Guerrier from Oregon, I think, is gonna be first team. So I think a couple guys have to drop off from that first team. That could be Bagley and Benedict Mathurin, who are more NBA prospects than great college players.
Yeah, I think I'll say that both them will be first team all league players. I guess I haven't done the full 10 player race, but I think when you have like 10, potential first team all Pac-12 level players like you do with Tubelis and Mathurin, then you kind of surround them with the proper shooting. I think that with Koloko, with Omar Vallo inside, I think you have an idea you're going to get physicality, toughness inside. So I think the front court's going to be good. So yeah, I think Arizona definitely one of those teams that's going to be kind of fun to watch this season.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And then I'll let you go next here with your next team.
Yeah, let me double check my list to see what order I have it in. Okay, I have Colorado State next. They were really solid last season. They essentially played like a play-in game for the NCAA tournament against Utah State in the Mountain West tournament. They lost, but they return everybody except for PJ Bird, and they're going to be really good. They had Chandler Jacobs from the D2 level at Dallas Baptist. Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy is one of the best duos in the entire country. They can go small and play Roddy at the 5 if they want to, with Adam Thistlewood or John Tonje at the 4, Jacobs at the 3, and then your two guards, Isaiah Stevens and Kendall Moore. But I think Deshaun Thomas is a guy that could take a big step up this year, a big man that can shoot the ball, and James Moores will be a solid role player. This is a really good Colorado State team. I have them ranked in my top 25. They get Alabama early in the season. I think that's going to be a big time litmus test for them. But I think they're the best team in the Mountain West. So I think they're a little underrated, and I think they should be ranked nationally.
Yeah, I think they definitely should be ranked. I had them ranked. So yeah, just in terms of Colorado State, I definitely behind all that points. I think Chandler Jacobs, you add him, he's like a high level bucket getter. He should come in and kind of fill a perfect role. You have Isaiah Stevens. You obviously have David Roddy, who's point center, point forward. So this team's going to be, I think, very good. And Colorado State, you mentioned Mountain West favorites. I definitely agree on that. And they'll be, I think, borderline top 25 throughout the kind of regular season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. If they're ranked like top 15 come selection Sunday, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And then I'll finish on my last one here. I went with Seton Hall. I think, kind of underrated. I think they have a really good starting five. I think Kadar Richmond was a good point guard addition. They didn't really have a true point guard, so adding a piece like Richmond's going to be big. He kind of brings the defensive toughness that they didn't have. I know they lose Sandro, who was kind of a he was an incredible piece for Seton Hall a season ago, but I just think they'll be able to kind of keep on going. I think they'll improve from a season ago uh, with having I think a better defense, with having like a pure point guard. And I think that they're another kind of team where like they don't necessarily have one guy who's going to beat you, but they have like five guys who on any given night can have their night and uh, ultimately end up beating you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Seton Hall's gonna be good, and my final one is Murray State. I like what they add with Trey Hannibal and Carter Collins, Jordan Skipper Brown, Damari Burns. Those should all be very impactful players. Elijah Farr from the JUCO level. Then you return your best two players with Tevin Brown and KJ Williams. They were one of the unluckiest teams in the country last year per Ken Palm's luck ratings. They had a bad season, but I think they'll be really solid this year. And I think they're not that far behind Belmont in the grand scheme of things in the OVC.
Yeah, I definitely think Belmont. I'm still picking Belmont to win the league, but
Yeah, yeah,
we
me too. But it's close.
yeah we I think you've picked Murray State before, so
I probably have, but rational thinking, it's Belmont.
okay. Murray State's going to be good though. That
Mhm.
Tevin Brown he's a bucket.
He's very good. Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the one seeds. I'm going to go. Uh, I think these are just going to be kind of the best regular season teams. Maybe not the best, regular plus tournament, but I'm going with Gonzaga, Kansas, Michigan, and Kentucky. I think Gonzaga, they may lose a game here or there this season. I don't think they'll enter the NCAA tournament undefeated, but they'll still, I think, do enough non-conference play to get it. I think Kansas ends up winning the Big 12, so that's kind of the premises. I think it's going to be down to either Kansas or Texas. I think Kansas, ultimately edges Texas out, wins the Big 12, and gets, I think, the South region is what they're fighting for. Kentucky, I think, is going to win the SEC. They'll be my pick. And then Michigan, I think, ends up in the East region. I think it's going to be a tight race between them and Purdue, but I think Michigan ultimately, I could see both those teams winning. I think Michigan though ends up with the one seed.
Yeah, I think for me it'll be Gonzaga, or that's my final four. Gonzaga, UCLA, Texas, and Purdue. I think will be the one seeds. That's kind of how I have it ranked right now. So for one seeds, I'll go like that. But my final four looks a little different. I have Gonzaga, Kentucky, UCLA, and Indiana. So going a little different. I'm not going to say all the one seeds I have are going to be in the final four because that's probably not happening. So
Yeah. Uh, Next up, I guess since we've done our one seeds, Cinderella teams. We may as well start with you. You're the mid-major aficionado. So, which
yeah.
teams do you want?
I guess, yeah, I guess you could call me that if you want to, but I'll go with I'll just briefly touch on some of them. Like Buffalo, I think could be really good. They open with Michigan in Ann Arbor. That'll be a much closer game than I think people would realize because Buffalo's really good. They're athletic with Nathan Williams and Josh Mballa. They have shooting with Ronaldo Segu, Maceo Jack, Keyshawn Bruton, Curtis Jones, not the one that was on Oklahoma State and Penn State. And then they have Brock Bertram, who's a good big man defender. So they should be really good this season in the MAC. Iona, they're a little injured right now, but I think when they're fully healthy, they should be one of the better mid-major teams in college basketball with Tyson Jolly and Elijah Joyner coming in. Bergine Louis, a great defender. Nelly Jr. Joseph is a really good player. Quinn Slazinski can stretch the floor and shoot the ball. And, of course, Rick Pitino's our head coach. So they could be like a 11, 12, 13 seed that makes it to the Sweet 16. Then you look at all the top four teams from the Valley. I could see Drake, Loyola Chicago, Northern Iowa, and Missouri State all making a run in the Big Dance. South Dakota State is a team I like a lot. Baylor Shireman, Noah Friedel. They have some athleticism down low. Matt Dentlinger is a good player, and then they have Douglas Wilson, who was the preseason player of the year last year, I believe, in the Summit League. He's athletic. They want to take a lot of 3-pointers. That's what they'll do, and that's a formula to win in the NCAA tournament. So I think that's something you could watch out for Eric Henderson's Jackrabbits. And then Northern Colorado is kind of a dark horse that I'm throwing out there because they can really shoot the ball. They have a really good offense. Drew Kookshausen coming in from McNeese State was one of the best shooters in college basketball the past few years. Dalton Necht as a JUCO player was really good. And then you return Bodie Hume, who can shoot the ball. You have Matt Johnson, who can shoot the ball. Kurt Jokuch is good inside. So you have a lot of options for scoring. You have a big man presence with Jokuch and a lot of shooting. So if they're able to win the Big Sky, I have Southern Utah as a team to beat in the Big Sky, but if Northern Colorado winds up being that team, I think they could win a game in the tournament as like a 14 seed.
Yeah, they would be definitely tough to play against. I went with Louisiana Tech as kind of one of my teams. I think with them, they're just going to be – they have a player in Kenneth Lofton Jr., who we've touched on numerous times on this podcast. He's a tank inside. He's going to be hard to score against. I think he's going to be kind of a big piece. I think a kind of, another team touching on, I guess Belmont would be, another one that could.
Do they count though? Are they really a Cinderella team?
I think if they make the Sweet 16, maybe you could say.
Okay, yeah, I think they could get there. I think they could get to the Elite Eight. They have a really good team. Like, I guess if I'm counting the Valley teams, I should count them too. That's fair. Yeah, I agree. They're definitely a Cinderella type team.
Like if Loyola Chicago has been to two
That's
Sweet
true.
16, so
one Final Four.
Yeah, and one Final Four. So if Belmont makes their first Sweet 16, they're definitely in it. I think New Mexico State could be a team. I think they have a lot of talent. I think they could potentially win a game. You touched on Buffalo. I think them or Ohio could be kind of Cinderella teams. I think both those teams are capable of winning a game or two in the NCAA tournament. So, and then Colgate's another one. They have, they're going to be fun to watch this year.
No definitely, Jordan Burns, but
no Jordan Burns, but still a lot of pieces back. So Colgate could potentially win a game, so long as they're not playing Devo Davis in Arkansas.
Yeah, that was tough, but
yeah,
they led for most of the first half.
Yeah, and then final one, Louisiana Lafayette.
I agree with that one too. Yeah, I don't know why I left them and New Mexico State out. I like those a lot. Theo Akuba and Jordan Brown, just an awesome big man duo for the Raging Cajuns in the Sun Belt.
That's a front court that might overload. Like they might be like a
top 10 front court in the country. Like that's like really good. Like Akuba could play on most high major teams, and Brown could have went to Texas or Tennessee. So he could have went pretty much anywhere he wanted to.
Yeah, you're telling me like Villanova's stopping that front court?
No,
I don't know.
They're not. No, they're not.
Villanova might outscore them, but
they will. Yeah, they'll make a lot of threes, but they won't be able to stop them inside.
Yeah.
So
North Carolina might actually be able to stop them, but
yeah, probably North Carolina.
Baylor, Shamua Chachua. That if Louisiana Lafayette, you called Oral Roberts over Ohio State. If Louisiana Lafayette plays Baylor,
okay,
I'm picking Louisiana Lafayette.
Noted. I'll remember this. Yeah, it's noted.
Okay, there we go. I guess next team here, Dark Horse Final Four teams. I'm going to kind of stick with the mid-major level here. I think St. Bonaventure's a team. They have really good team chemistry, a lot of experience, good guard play, a great interior big man. They lost to LSU last year, but I think it was kind of like one of those games. It was a little bit closer than maybe the final score ended up looking like. So I think St. Bonaventure's definitely a team being a dark horse Final Four team.
Yeah, I think for me, you can look at like Indiana, Arizona, some teams I've talked about them high on, and like It's tough to get to the Final Four, but like Colorado State, Nevada, San Diego State, all really good in the Mountain West, and then like maybe like BYU. Those are all that would be tough for any of them to get there, but maybe you never know. Maybe Drake or Loyola Chicago. Maybe one of them. We'll see.
Yeah. I also have Virginia Tech and Colorado State as nominees.
I
I
like
guess
it. Yeah, I like it.
we talked on Colorado State earlier, and then I
Yeah,
think
shout out
Virginia Tech.
Colorado State. Yeah, shout out Colorado State.
Virginia Tech, they're going to be tough.
Keve Aluma, they have shooting. The depth is a big problem for me, but I think they can be really good.
Final Four time. I'll go first here. I have Gonzaga, Kansas, Texas, and Kentucky. I predicted, based on my preseason bracketology, the winners of each region. I went with 3 1 seeds and a 2 seed, so I'm not great at being the biggest upset picker, but that's my Final Four.
I don't do bracketology, so I kind of just guessed. I think I already spoiled mine, but I went Gonzaga, Kentucky, UCLA, and Indiana. I guess kind of like 3 blue bloods in there. That wasn't intentional, but I think Indiana's going to be really good, so I put them in there.
Indiana's a red blood, so 2 blue bloods and a red blood.
Define red blood.
Blue blood, but red team.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then I think we both have the same champion, Gonzaga. I don't think they're going to be as dominant in the regular season, but I still think they end up pulling it out in the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's also Davion Mitchell to just completely outplay them in the title game this year either.
Yeah, I'm going with Gonzaga to win it all. I'm gonna pick that every year until it happens. So.
Yeah. So that will wrap it up for this podcast. Thanks again for everyone who tuned in. College basketball season's right on the way. We're going to do a Champions Classic preview pod shortly, but until next time, thanks again for tuning in.